If you are hearing these words right now, it is not by chance. This video found you because something in you is ready, even if your mind isn't sure what that means yet. There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes unbearable, when the routine that once held you together starts to feel like a cage you can no longer ignore. You may not be able to name it, but you can feel it. A quiet breaking point, an invisible crack between who you are and who you have been pretending to be. That is not failure. That is the soul signaling that something deeper wants to live. Maybe you have been pushing through your days, smiling, showing up, doing what's expected, but somewhere behind your composure, there is a scream that has no sound, only pressure. And lately, that pressure has been growing. Carl Jung once wrote that the soul will not tolerate self-deception forever. When the mask becomes too tight, the psyche intervenes. It whispers through exhaustion, through the sudden tears you can't explain, through the strange emptiness that follows every victory. You didn't stumble in this message. You summoned it. Because there is a part of you that is done pretending everything is fine. There is a part of you that is starting to question why fine has become the best you can hope for. This is the moment the false self begins to fracture. The moment when life itself starts rearranging to bring you face to face with your truth. You are not lost. You are being called. And that call doesn't arrive when you are ready. It arrives when you are desperate enough to listen. That is why you are here now, in this quiet collision between chance and necessity. Because the part of you that has been sleeping has finally decided it is time to wake up. So as you listen, let go of the need to analyze or fix. Just breathe. You don't have to hold yourself together in this moment. You only need to let the words find the place that has been waiting to be seen. Because what follows is not advice. It is a mirror, a reflection of what your soul has been trying to tell you. That the life you have built is cracking not to end you, but to free you. And if that feels unsettling, it is because it is supposed to. This is the first sign of transformation. The place where pretending ends and truth begins. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that no amount of rest can fix. It is not the tiredness of the body. It is the fatigue of living a life that quietly betrays you. You wake up, pour the coffee, scroll through messages, prepare for another day. And yet somewhere between the checklist and the mirror, something inside you whispers, I can't keep doing this. You look fine from the outside. People still call you reliable, strong, grounded. But you know how much effort it takes to appear that way. There is a quiet ache behind your smile, a hollowness that no one seems to notice. The fatigue of pretending that the life you built still fits. You might not even know when it started. Maybe after the children grew up and the house became too silent. Maybe when the job that once gave you meaning turned into a treadmill of endless obligations. Or maybe it is the weight of always being the one who listens, the one who fixes, the one who never falls apart. There is a grief that comes when the identity you have carried no longer feels alive in your hands. And the hardest part is, you can't explain it to anyone, because from the outside, nothing is wrong. You have what you are supposed to want: stability, respect, people who depend on you. But internally, something sacred is starving. This is not laziness. It is not depression. It is the soul's refusal to keep performing a version of you that no longer feels true. Carl Jung described this moment as the beginning of individuation. the turning of the psyche toward its own center, the moment the deeper self refuses to remain silent. He saw it as a natural, necessary rebellion of the spirit, a revolt against the masks that once kept us safe. From childhood, you were taught to adapt, to please, to endure, to be good, to be grateful. You learned to smile through the ache, to apologize for being tired, to swallow your truth because it made others uncomfortable. And so you became expert at disappearing in plain sight. But eventually, the soul refuses invisibility. What you call burnout or boredom is often the psyche demanding something real. That is why even small things begin to feel unbearable. The shallow conversations, the endless tasks, the quiet resentment that grows each time you say yes when you mean no. The psyche does not punish, it insists. When truth is ignored, it speaks through the body, through sleepless nights, restless thoughts, a heaviness you can't name. And if you continue to push it away, it grows louder until it breaks through as crisis. Jung realized that this collapse is not destruction, it is reconstruction. It is your soul reclaiming authorship of your life. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And while that may sound severe, it is also deeply compassionate. Because pain is the psyche's way of saying, you are ready to stop pretending. You're not losing yourself, you are meeting yourself again. Not the efficient, responsible version that everyone knows, but the woman who once dreamed, who once felt alive in her own skin, who still lives beneath the noise. The life that used to sustain you has simply reached its edge. And though that realization feels terrifying, it is also the beginning of freedom. Because when you can finally name what's wrong, you can begin to follow what's right. So before you turn away from this ache, pause. This is not the end of your story. It is the soul signaling that the next chapter is waiting. And in that next chapter, everything you have avoided will start demanding to be seen. The storm is coming, but it is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you. In the next segment, we will explore what happens when that whisper turns into a storm, when the life you have built begins to shake, and the truth you have buried refuses to stay silent any longer. There comes a stage when the whisper inside you becomes impossible to ignore. What once felt like mild discomfort now moves through your life like a quiet storm, not violent, but relentless. At first, you tell yourself it is just stress. You need a break, a vacation, a new project, something to reignite you. But the emptiness returns no matter how many candles you light, how many lists you make, how many times you tell yourself to be grateful. You go through the motions, but it all feels strangely detached, like you are watching your own life from the outside. You hear laughter, but it does not reach you. You check off accomplishments, but the satisfaction fades before you even close the notebook. That is the first symptom, disconnection. You are not broken. You are awakening. Your soul is beginning to reject what's false. Carl Jung observed that when the psyche has been ignored too long, it doesn't whisper forever. It revolts. At first through restlessness, then fatigue, and finally through collapse. It starts by pulling away your illusions one by one. What used to give you comfort begins to feel suffocating. The roles that once defined you start to feel like disguises. And the small cracks in your routine turn into fault lines. Maybe you notice it in your mornings. You wake up with a weight on your chest before the day even begins. Maybe it is in your relationships. The way you keep trying to explain your exhaustion to people who don't seem to understand. Or maybe it is in your reflection. That faint recognition that the person staring back isn't the one you came here to become. Jung wrote that the greatest danger to the soul is not madness, but massification, the slow death of selfhood through adaptation. You have played by the rules, met expectations, done everything that is supposed to guarantee happiness. And yet something vital has gone missing, because you were never meant to live as a function of duty. You were meant to live as a pulse of truth. When you ignore that pulse, the psyche doesn't stay quiet. It begins to communicate through symptoms, the insomnia, the tears that arrive without reason, the sudden irritation at small things, the inexplicable sense that you are wasting your life. These are not weaknesses. They are messages. The unconscious is turning up the volume, asking you to pay attention before it has to scream. And if you still resist, it will find stronger ways to wake you. A relationship will collapse. A career will end. A health crisis may appear seemingly out of nowhere. To the mind, it looks like chaos. But to the soul, it is choreography. It is the psyche saying, "If you won't walk willingly, I will move the ground beneath you." That is why this stage feels unbearable. You are being torn between two lives, the one that is dying and the one that hasn't fully begun. You are not losing control. You are losing illusion. And it is supposed to feel like falling, because every rebirth begins with surrender. You might even notice strange coincidences, a quote you needed to hear appearing on your feed, a memory resurfacing at the perfect moment. The more the old self crumbles, the more the unconscious begins to reveal its map. So when everything feels like it is falling apart, pause before you panic. Because what looks like destruction is often the psyche preparing space for something new. In the next segment, we'll go deeper into that truth. Why the suffering that feels unbearable is not punishment, but initiation, and how this collapse, painful as it feels, is the first real proof that you are waking up. At some point, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start whispering, "What is this trying to show me?" That is the moment suffering begins to change shape. It stops being a punishment and starts becoming a teacher. We live in a world terrified of pain, a world that tells you to smile, move on, and stay positive. But Jung realized that pain has a purpose far deeper than comfort can ever provide. He called it the path to consciousness, the soul's way of forcing the ego to see what it refused to see. He once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And those words hold both brutality and grace, because awakening is rarely gentle. The psyche doesn't evolve through peace. It evolves through pressure. It bends you, breaks you, until there is nothing left to protect but the truth that your life is not falling apart. It is falling into place. But you can't see that yet, because the old structure still defines your safety. Think about how we treat suffering. We medicate it, distract from it, label it as burnout, midlife crisis, or even weakness. But beneath all those words lies something sacred, the death of what's false. You might tell yourself, "It is just hormones," or "I just need a vacation." But deep down, you know it is something else. It is the life you have outgrown begging to be released. Suffering does not arrive to destroy you. It arrives to strip away what no longer serves you. The identity built on perfection, the marriage built on silence, the career built on validation, the habits built on fear. It hurts because those things were once your anchors, and now they are your chains. The psyche knows when you have reached the limit. When you have ignored its whispers long enough, it transforms discomfort into a breaking point, a crisis that forces you to choose. Cling to what's dying or step into what's being born. You might think you are unraveling, but you are actually being remade. Your exhaustion, your grief, your restlessness, they are not signs of failure. They are evidence of evolution. Jung observed that the psyche intentionally produces tension as a way of moving toward balance. When the conscious mind resists change, the unconscious applies pressure until alignment becomes inevitable. That pressure is the suffering you feel. It is the inner fire that burns through denial and pretension until only authenticity remains. And yes, it feels cruel, because transformation doesn't announce itself politely. It takes away your distractions, your false certainties, your comfortable illusions, so that you are left with nothing but yourself. But that is where you begin to meet the self for the first time. The self that is not defined by your roles, your age, your mistakes, your achievements, but by the quiet pulse of your truth. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are not broken for being tired of pretending. You are simply standing in the fire of your own becoming. Don't run from it. Sit with it. Ask your pain, what are you trying to free me from? Because every emotion carries intelligence, and every tear carries information. Once you begin to listen, you'll notice something unexpected. Life starts to respond. Small signs, strange coincidences, messages that appear exactly when you need them most. It is not fantasy, it is communication. It is your unconscious speaking through symbols. Because once you are ready to hear, the psyche will use everything, dreams, words, even this video, to show you where to go next. And that is what we'll explore in the next segment, how the universe begins to mirror your transformation, and why those coincidences you have been noticing are not random at all. Have you ever noticed how certain things seem to find you at the exact moment you need them most? A phrase that stops you mid-scroll. A song you haven't heard in years suddenly playing when your heart is heavy. A dream that feels too vivid to ignore. A video like this one showing up in your feed, whispering words you didn't even know you were searching for. It is not luck, and it is not coincidence. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, the mysterious bridge between your inner world and outer events. He discovered that when the psyche reaches a breaking point, when consciousness begins to shift, life itself starts to rearrange around that awakening. The outer world becomes a mirror, reflecting what the soul is ready to see. It is as if the universe and your unconscious are speaking the same symbolic language, because they are. When you have been living out of alignment for too long, you begin to attract exactly the images, words, and people that hold the keys to your return. It is not magic, it is meaning. The unconscious is always trying to heal you, and it uses symbols as its alphabet. Maybe you notice recurring numbers or a certain animal appearing again and again. Maybe every time you think of leaving something toxic, you see a door in your dreams. Or a friend says a sentence that cuts through your confusion like a knife. These are not random moments. They are coordinates. They guide you toward what your conscious mind cannot yet comprehend. Jung observed that when the unconscious can no longer speak through logic, it begins to speak through events. He called this the symbolic function of reality, where the world itself becomes a living dialogue with the soul. And the moment you stop dismissing these signs as coincidence, they multiply. You start to see the pattern, the quiet order beneath the chaos. When you are ready, the right message appears. Never too soon, never too late. Because readiness is what summons revelation. The rational mind may resist this. It wants evidence, control, guarantees. But the psyche does not operate by proof. It operates by resonance. It draws to you the exact experiences that will dissolve your resistance and deepen your awareness. That is why certain people seem to enter your life just as you are ready to face a particular truth, or why you keep encountering the same lesson in different forms, until you finally learn it. The outer story is just the mirror of your inner evolution. This realization changes everything. It means that life is not happening to you. It is happening with you. The world is not random. It is responsive. Every moment is an invitation to see deeper. So if you are here now, listening to these words, it is not because an algorithm sent you here. It is because something within you magnetized this message. Your soul reached out, and life answered. And once you start to listen, you can't go back to sleep. You begin to sense the quiet intelligence guiding you. The pattern that says, you are not lost. You are being led, but there is one more truth that synchronicity will demand of you. It will not let you stay an observer forever. It will keep guiding you until you act. Because recognition without movement becomes another form of denial. And that brings us to the next stage of this journey, the one most people avoid. The point where knowing is no longer enough. The point where you must leap. There comes a point when understanding is no longer enough. You have analyzed, reflected, journaled, prayed, watched, waited. But no amount of thinking can carry you across the threshold. At some point, you must leap. Carl Jung described this moment as the threshold of transformation, the point where the old self collapses and the new one demands to be born. He compared it to meeting the inner dragon, that archetypal guardian of change who blocks the passage to new life. The dragon is fear itself. It whispers, "Stay where it is safe." It reminds you of all the times you have fallen before. It shows you visions of disappointment, rejection, ruin, not because it wants to destroy you, but because it feeds on your hesitation. Every woman who's ever transformed her life has met this dragon, the one that says, "You are too old. You'll lose everything. It is too late to start again." And yet, those who listen closely realize the dragon is guarding not death, but freedom. Jung wrote that the encounter with oneself is at first the encounter with one's own shadow. Before you find your light, you must face what you have denied. The buried anger, the grief you never allowed yourself to feel, the hunger for meaning that you tried to silence beneath responsibility. This confrontation is not graceful. It is messy, emotional, raw. There are nights when you'll question your sanity, mornings when the world feels too heavy to face. But these moments are proof that something sacred is shifting. The leap does not require you to be fearless. It only requires that you stop lying to yourself. You don't leap because you feel ready. You leap because the alternative has become unbearable. You can't keep shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You can't keep bargaining with a life that no longer feels alive. And deep down, you already know this. That is what makes the fear so intense. It is not the unknown you fear. It is your own potential, the part of you that knows you were meant for more. Jung understood this paradox. He said that the process of individuation feels like death because the ego experiences the loss of control as annihilation. But what dies is not you. It is the character you have been playing. The one who's always fine, always accommodating, always holding it together. And once that mask dissolves, what's left is terrifyingly honest and beautifully alive. Taking the leap does not mean quitting everything or running away. It means daring to live in truth, one choice at a time. It means saying no when your body says no, even if your voice trembles. It means walking away from what drains you, even if the world calls you selfish. It means trusting that what's meant for you will meet you on the path you are meant to walk. There will be loss. There will be grief. But there will also be clarity, the kind that no longer depends on external permission. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege costs everything false. The leap is simply the act of paying that price. So if you feel like the ground beneath you is disappearing, remember, it is not because you are failing. It is because the earth beneath your old self is giving way so that something real can take root. You don't have to leap perfectly. You just have to be willing. Because life does not begin when you are ready. It begins when you are honest. In the next part, we'll face the most difficult truth of all, why no one can cross that threshold for you, and why that realization, as painful as it feels, is the beginning of your liberation. There is a truth that no one wants to face at first, because it ends the dream that someone else will make life easier. No one is coming to save you. Not the partner who still doesn't understand your silence. Not the friend who always says, "You'll be okay." Not the system that profits from keeping you exhausted. And certainly not the perfect version of you keep promising you'll become one day. It sounds harsh, but in truth, it is one of the most merciful realizations you'll ever have. Because the moment you stop waiting for rescue, you begin to remember your strength. You were not meant to be saved. You were meant to wake up. Carl Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, cannot be outsourced. No one can walk this path for you. A therapist may point the way, a mentor can illuminate the map, but the steps are yours alone. You are the only one who can decide to stop performing. The only one who can stop feeding what drains you. The only one who can choose to live in truth rather than image. For years, you may have been waiting for permission, for your children to be grown, for your partner to finally change, for the timing to be right. But waiting is the most seductive form of fear. Because as long as you are waiting, you don't have to risk becoming. The world benefits from your waiting. It thrives on your exhaustion, your self-doubt, your obedience. It teaches you to stay small and call it humility, to silence your truth and call it maturity, to sacrifice your authenticity and call it love. But love built on the abandonment of self is not love. It is dependency. And dependency is what the world rewards. A dependent person consumes, obeys, apologizes. An awakened person questions, creates, and reclaims. This is why Jung said the greatest danger to the modern soul is not chaos, but conformity. When you live by someone else's script, you may appear stable, but inside, you are slowly fading. Radical responsibility is the antidote to that fading. It is the moment you say, "My pain may not be my fault, but my healing is my task." It is when you realize that freedom is not given, it is claimed. Taking responsibility doesn't mean carrying everything alone. It means no longer abandoning yourself. It means listening when your body says no, when your intuition says leave, when your dreams whisper that something greater is calling. It is understanding that true maturity is not about having it all together, but about owning your choices, the beautiful, the broken, and the becoming. And yes, it is lonely sometimes, because few will understand this kind of freedom. It doesn't perform well on social media. It doesn't earn applause, but it is the quiet kind of power that changes the texture of your life. You begin to move differently. You stop waiting for signs of approval. You stop seeking validation from those who don't value depth. You learn that peace doesn't come from fixing everything around you. It comes from finally being loyal to your own soul. And when you stand in that truth, the world no longer terrifies you, because you are no longer living for its approval. Responsibility is not punishment. It is liberation. It is the moment you step into authorship of your own story, when you realize that the pen has been in your hands all along. And that realization leads to the final crossing, the invisible line between survival and life. between the woman you were told to be and the one you were always meant to become. That is what we will explore next. The moment of return, when you finally step beyond fear and begin to live as the author of your own destiny. There is an invisible line that separates the life you have been managing from the life that is waiting to be lived. It is not marked by geography or time. It is marked by truth. You don't cross it through effort. You cross it the moment you stop betraying yourself. You have spent years keeping the peace, holding the family together, carrying unspoken responsibilities that no one ever fully saw. And for a while, that version of you served a purpose. She kept things stable. She made sure the world didn't fall apart. But somewhere along the way, she forgot to ask if she was still alive inside that stability. Now you stand here, on the threshold between the familiar and the free. Your hands tremble. Your heart doesn't feel ready. But readiness was never the point. Honesty is. Carl Jung wrote that the thing you most need is always found in the place you least want to look. In that place, your fear, your pain, your longing is not the enemy. It is the doorway. Fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means you are close. It is the soul's way of saying, pay attention. Every time you feel that ache in your chest, that tug in your gut, that quiet insistence that something has to change, that is not weakness. That is the compass of your becoming. You don't have to leap dramatically. You don't have to know how it all unfolds. Crossing the line can be as simple as one act of honesty. One no that protects your peace. One yes that scares you because it is real. One moment of silence where you finally hear your own voice. This is what true change looks like. Not fireworks, but alignment. Not noise, but presence. Not perfection, but peace. And on the other side of this line, life does not become easier. It becomes clearer. The people who stay in your life feel more real. The work you do carries more meaning. The quiet moments don't ache with emptiness anymore. They breathe. Because this time, you are not living to perform. You are living to feel. The world around you may not understand. It rarely celebrates those who walk away from the script. But life itself will start to respond differently. Synchronicities will return, not as desperate signs, but as affirmations. Gentle nods from the universe saying, you are exactly where you need to be. This is the quiet miracle of awakening. It doesn't make you more. It makes you whole. You'll notice peace arriving in small ways, in the way morning light touches your face, in the way you stop rushing, in the way solitude starts to feel like home instead of punishment. You'll find yourself smiling, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally stopped running from yourself. That is what crossing the line truly means. It is not escaping your life. It is inhabiting it fully, as the woman who has seen her own depths and chosen to rise anyway. If this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, trust that it wasn't an accident. You have reached the point where the soul begins to rewrite the story. And this moment is your invitation. Write it into being. Whisper it out loud. Seal it as a promise to yourself. I choose to cross. Because once you name it, you have already begun. And from this moment on, every step you take, no matter how small, is part of the return, not to who you were, but to who you have always been.